Welcome to The Hidden Load, the podcast where we uncover the unseen weight carried by the educators and leaders in medicine and explore how to lighten it. I am Dr. Santina or Tina Wheat. I am a family physician, an educator, a leader, and a coach. Each week, we will dig into the challenges that often go unspoken, from burnout and boundaries to purpose and identity to figuring out sustainability, and share practical tools to help you move from chaos to calm and from burnout to balance. Because the hidden load does not have to be yours to carry alone, and in fact, shouldn't be. Let's get started. I am so glad that you are here today. And this is episode number 8, Advocacy. In our last episode, we talked all about purpose, the why that fuels our work, even in the middle of an overwhelming system. We walked through Margie Worrell's 4 guiding questions to help us reconnect with our meeting. As a reminder, those are: what makes you come alive? What are your innate strengths? Where do you add the greatest value? And how will you measure your life? And I hope you took the opportunity to reflect on those things, because today we are going to take that one step further. Because purpose is so powerful, but it doesn't end with us. Once we have reconnected with the why of our work, the natural next question is, how do we use that clarity of our why to help make things better? And this is where advocacy comes in. In healthcare, advocacy often gets painted as something quote unquote extra, something for people with more time, more influence, or more energy. But here is the truth. If you have ever spoken up in a meeting about an unsafe policy, if you've ever pushed to protect your team's time, or if you've ever helped a patient navigate a system that was not built for them, then you have already been advocating, even if you didn't realize it. Now, advocacy is simply aligning your voice and your action with your purpose. And it's doing that in the service of something that is larger than yourself. And in this moment, when burnout is an epidemic, resources are stretched thin, and trust in healthcare is obviously fragile, advocacy just isn't optional. It is essential. And why is that? Well, because without advocacy, our systems just don't change. And when our system does not change, the hidden load only grows heavier and heavier, not just as we're experiencing it, but for those who come after us. Now, advocacy is obviously important, but let's be real. It is certainly not easy. There's so many barriers. The first being fear. There's that fear of being labeled as difficult, or of jeopardizing career opportunities, or even being seen as that squeaky wheel. Sometimes we worry about having that label. And then there's another barrier of fatigue. Many of us feel like we are barely keeping our heads above water. And the thought of advocating, of taking on just one more thing, well, honestly, it feels impossible. And then there's the confusion. We all know that we want things to be better, but we don't always know how to make them better or where to start. The problems can feel massive, and our influence can feel very small. Now, I don't want to discount any of these barriers because they are all extremely real. And if you have felt any of them, then you are certainly not alone. I have certainly felt each and every one of those myself. Allow me to share an example from my own experience. There have been several times when my team has been faced with new requirements that were documentation related. And on paper, every single time, each one of those requirements looked small. Maybe just 1 or 2 extra clicks per patient. But in practice, a couple of extra clicks per patient can add up to additional hours of work every single week. Work that takes us away from our other patients, from teaching, from spending time with our families. It adds to that dreaded pajama time that some of us face. And at first, when these come up, I think, what's the point of pushing back? It's just one policy, and the system is too big to change. Nobody's going to listen to me. But then, even if it's not a big deal to me, when I talk to my team or I talk to my residents, I'm reminded that it's not just about me. It's also about what my team and my residents are learning. If they see me accepting endless efficiencies, if they see me accepting endless inefficiencies without speaking up, when my favorite mantra is work smarter and not harder, then they assume that it's just how medicine works. And so I now raise the concern. I always frame it in the terms of patient care, education, and importantly, sustainability. It doesn't always magically fix everything, but often it does lead to adjustments that ease the burden. And more importantly, it models for my learners that advocacy is part of the job. And of course, when I advocate for these changes, I also tell my residents what I've advocated for and what I have been successful in helping us navigate and what I have not been successful helping us navigate, so that they see both sides. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, you're the program director. People listen to you more. Well, sometimes that's true, and sometimes that's not true. Sometimes it requires me demonstrating it from multiple other people because they can demonstrate the patient care side of it, or they're in clinic much more often than I am, and so they're able to share those things. And so sometimes it's more valuable coming from that person who is not a leader, and I empower them to lift it up. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I'm not the leader, or my voice isn't going to matter, just remember that's not always the case. And sometimes, as I mentioned before, we're tired and advocacy just doesn't feel possible. So I want to talk about how we can practice advocacy in a way that does feel possible, even in the setting of a demanding career. And I want to start by sharing 3 steps. The first step is to start close in. You might love advocating on a national scale, but that is not the only way to advocate. Advocacy does not always mean writing op-eds or lobbying Congress. Sometimes advocacy is about speaking up in your immediate circle, and we often let that go without realizing the importance. I want you to think about, is there a workflow that consistently causes pain to your team and drains their energy, particularly if it's doing it without improving care? Is there a learner who you work with that is often overlooked? Is there a patient barrier that is possible to address at the local level? I want you to start with what is right in front of you, because those small wins, when you fix them, they build confidence. Then let's move on to the second step, and that is to align the advocacy with your purpose. We talked about in episode 7 what makes you come alive and where you add the greatest value. Use that as your filter. If teaching lights you up, then advocate for the things that have to do with teaching. Advocate for the protected time with teaching. Advocate for those learners. If you are gifted at building culture, then I want you to advocate for policies that protect your team's culture, that protect your team's well-being. Advocacy that aligns with purpose is much more sustainable. Advocacy that doesn't align with your purpose can burn you out. The third step is to link arms with others. We don't want to advocate alone because advocacy is rarely a solo act, and it doesn't have to be. You should partner with colleagues who share your concerns. You should invite your learners and your teammates into the process. Advocacy in itself is a powerful teaching tool. Build coalitions that amplify your voice. Because when advocacy is collective, it feels less like you're pushing a boulder uphill, and it feels more like you're rolling it together. So here is the reframe that I want you to take from today. Advocacy is absolutely not a distraction from our work. Advocacy is the work. Every time we speak up for better systems, we are not just protecting ourselves. We are protecting the people who come after us. That legacy is work. That is leadership. So, how do you teach others to advocate? It's important for others to know that changes aren't happening just by magic. It's important for those who you are teaching or training that the changes are happening based on information, based on someone saying, hey, this is the squeaky wheel, or hey, this impacts patient care. Each of those things is something that you need to demonstrate to your learners and to your teammates. It might be by bringing them along to the meeting. It might be by asking them to help identify the example so that they can be shared. But it always involves closing the loop and showing them what that advocacy did and how it turned out on the other side. Now, here is my invitation for this week. I want you to think about one place where your purpose and your frustration intersect. What is one small step of advocacy that you could take? Maybe it's a conversation with a supervisor, or maybe it's mentoring a learner just to see them as an advocate. Maybe it's providing them with the tools so that they can do it and see that outcome. Maybe it's just naming the issue out loud so that others don't feel alone. And as a caveat, I don't want that to totally turn into a vent session. But if you can help identify what the issue is and identify the root of the problem, then that gives you a next step of where to go with it. That one single step, that matters. It builds courage. And courage over time, well, it shifts culture. And so I hope that you will think about what is that one thing that you can advocate for this week. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Hidden Load. In our next episode, we are going to explore something that comes up often in these conversations, and that is moral injury versus burnout. These terms are sometimes used interchangeably, but they're not the same. And understanding the difference between moral injury and burnout is crucial for how we care for ourselves, how we care for our teams, and advocate within our systems. I'll see you then. Thanks for joining me on The Hidden Load. Tag me on Instagram at Dr. Tina Wheat or email me at santina@santinawheat.com with your takeaways and ideas. Don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, let's lighten your hidden load.